Many of you have asked, how can you move the content that you created in your demo course to the new course that you'll have for this upcoming school year? Well, it's very simple, and let me show you how to do that. Blackboard has created tools that allow you to either export, archive, or copy course materials, and let me explain all those. If you go down to the control panel area of the course that you're managing, this class management area, and you go down to Packages and Utilities. In Packages and Utilities, you're going to see Class Copy, and you'll also see Export, Archive, or Import Class Cartridge, or Import Package. To move the content out of your demo course, what you're going to want to do is select Export. And let me explain what an export is. Exporting would bundle up all the course contents to allow you then to completely move that to a new course. Now in this case we would want to use export because what Blackboard does, it bundles the content up into a zip folder. And then that zip folder can be stored, it can be moved, it can be saved, or whatever. And in this case, because your existing course, that would be the demo course, is on a different application of Blackboard than your school year course. So the export is needed because you need to have something that can be transported, and that zip folder can be then moved. In a normal situation, for instance, when you get into next year and then you build your content in your course for this upcoming school year, and then next school year you want to move the content into the new course that's generated for that particular school year, you would just do a copy because you're working in the same application at Blackboard. So you don't really need a file to move around. You can just copy the contents. However, we're going to do an export here because we're moving across applications. So what you're going to do is you're going to click Export or Archive. It takes you to the same spot. And notice Export and Archive. Now, what's the difference between these two? Export is just going to bundle up that contents, put it in a zip folder, and you can move it, you can save it, you can store it somewhere. Archive would be if you ever want to keep the entire content of a course. That would be like the students, the enrollment in that course, the scores in that course, all the history of that particular course. Well, in this case, we're not going to do that. We're going to export. Now, when you click Export, it will then allow you to select the particular areas that you can save. Now, let's start here at the top, though, first. Notice we have the course ID. You'll see that. Class files here. Now this is something a little different. It defaults to copy links and copies of the content, so you would want that because that would take the content in the content folder of this class. That kind of takes us off into a discussion of the content system. We're not going to really get into that now, but just keep it at its default. You don't need to worry about these in terms of package size. And then you'll just check off all the contents that would be pertinent here. What I always do, I check everything, because if you don't have it, it's not going to make a difference. But that way you basically get everything you got. So I would check everything off there, and then I would submit that. Now once you do submit that, what's going to happen is it will begin to generate a file. So when you submit and you get back to this point, more than likely you're not going to see a file here, especially as you get into the future and you want to do exports and you have a lot of content. It takes a while for Blackboard to bundle that all up in a zip folder. So if you get back to this point and you don't see a file right there, that would be this export file, then that's fine. It's doing its thing and it's generating the file. All you would need to do is just occasionally click the refresh button, and eventually this file will appear. Now for what you've done for this demo course, that's going to happen. It's going to show up real quick. But just go ahead and click refresh a couple times and it's going to show up there. Initially, when I started doing this and I had a lot of content in that existing course, I'd get back to this point and nothing would happen. I'm thinking, what did I do wrong? Well, I didn't do anything wrong. I just wasn't patient. So just refresh a couple times, and what's going to happen then, a file will appear. So I did this prior to the tutorial. So that file is already here. Now that's a zip file, a zip folder. All the contents of this course resides in this zip folder. Now what you're going to want to do is make this accessible to your new course. So if you right click on that folder, so I'm right clicking, now notice I can save target as. So probably what you want to do is just save this folder to the desktop of your computer. So if I click save target as, then I can just take it right to the desktop. And then you can save it anywhere you want, but I just find if you do it on the desktop, then you know where it is and it's easy to get to. And then if you're on a school computer, you can just delete it after you're done with the export process. But I'll just click save. And what's happening is this information now is being processed and sent to the desktop of this computer. So I'm not going to take the time here to do all that. I'm just going to cancel that. So let's assume that I did place that on the desktop of my computer. At this point, you can close the demo course. And then what you're going to want to do is go to your new course for this coming school year. Now, that course at this point may or may not exist. I know it depends on the scheduling in the schools and so forth. So depending on how quickly your buildings have schedules created and the students assigned to the courses, I'm not sure if your new course exists right now. That would be a good question to ask. But if the new course exists, or when it does exist, you would go to that new course and you would open that new course. So let's assume now I'm going to go to this new course of mine, and I go into that new course, and you're not going to see any content most likely. If it's a brand new course, you might have 3 buttons, sort of 3 default buttons that were created, and you don't have any content in there. The students are probably enrolled. If you have the data integration piece, students wouldn't be enrolled in that new course, but you have no content. That's the point of the export. You're going to bring content in instead of having to build content from scratch. So what you would do then in the new course, you'll scroll down and you'll go to this package and utilities, and you will import package. You're not going to import a cartridge, that's something else. Import package. I select import package, and in this case I would click out to import package. I would now browse for that zip file, so I would just click browse. I would go to the desktop of the computer because I know it exists there. I find the zip folder, I double click on it, and then that address or that name of that file, the name of that folder would appear in here. I go down and then notice it's almost like the export process, only in this case I'm grabbing all the content I want. Click off all those buttons and then submit. Now, just like the export, the generation of the zip file, it will take some time. But once you submit that and you refresh a bit here, all those buttons will begin to appear. Depending on how big the zip folder is, that would be the time it would take. So just be patient and refresh. Once the folders are all brought over, then you can arrange, you can go in, and I would go in and check all the items, make sure that the content copied, make sure the pictures and the links are there. Sometimes you have to do some cleaning up, but it is a lot easier to export and import. It's much easier doing that than recreating the wheel all over again. So give that a try, and hopefully that works for you. But remember, in the future, once you're in the same Blackboard application, come next year when you have this very robust course built and you want to pull it over into a new course, then you can use the copy process. It's a little quicker, much easier, but it really gives you the same results, and that is bringing the content from one course into another course. Thanks so much.